Clarissa Harlow Barton, or Clara Barton as she liked to be called, is a name that will forever be remembered because of the impact she made on millions of people's lives. Her assistance in the Civil War saved the lives of thousands of U.S. soldiers during these traumatic experiences and also helped family members through these rough times. She later transformed her work in the Civil War into the American Red Cross, which saved millions of lives and still does today. She was born on Christmas Day in 1821 in Massachusetts. As a young child, she cared for her brothers when they became seriously ill, and this is where her early medical experience came from. However, when she was 18 years old, she became a school teacher, but in 1854 she moved to Washington, D.C. and became a recording clerk at the U.S. Patent Office. She was one of the first women to work at equal pay with men at a federal job. Although as time went by, her anti-slavery views made her too controversial, therefore she went home to New England. However, in early 1861, she regained her job in D.C. just as the Civil War began. As the war was raging all around her, she was one of the first volunteers to show up at the Washington Infirmary to take care of all of the wounded soldiers. This began a lifelong career of aiding the sick and wounded. Later that year, she realized the lack of supplies the soldiers in the field faced daily. As she got more involved in the activities of the Civil War in D.C., she began to recognize these brave soldiers. Barton left the city hospitals and she began to aid the wounded and take bedding, clothes, food, and other necessities to the 6th Massachusetts Infantry, who had been attacked by Southerners in Maryland. Some were her childhood friends or even her former students. This was when Barton established a distribution agency to help the wounded young men. She would collect supplies herself and take donations from the public for the rest. Not only did she physically aid the young men, she offered emotional support for them too. Oftentimes she would read to them, write letters for them if they were unable to. She listened to their stories and she prayed with them. She then realized that she was needed most on the battlefield to help the soldiers on duty. She prodded the government and the army officials until 1862, when they finally allowed her to volunteer on the battlefield. Her first battle was the Cedar Mountain Battle in North Virginia in August of 1862. The surgeon on duty that night, overwhelmed by the human disaster surrounding him, wrote later, "I thought that night, if heaven ever sent out an angel, she must be one. Her assistance was so timely." Thereafter, she was known as the Angel of the Battlefield. After that night, Barton assisted at the battles of Fairfax Station, Chantilly, Harper's Ferry, South Mountain, Antietam, Fredericksburg, Charleston, Petersburg, and Cold Harbor. After the war ended in 1865, she established the Office of Correspondence with Friends of the Missing Men of the United States, and she identified over 22,000 missing soldiers. Her efforts to support and aid the soldiers during the Civil War were just the beginning of Clara Barton's impact on the world. In 1869, Barton moved to Europe to regain her health. It was in Geneva, Switzerland that she discovered the Red Cross organization that was established in 1864. When Barton returned home, she focused on spreading awareness and gaining support for the American Society of the Red Cross. She met with President Rutherford B. Hayes to make this dream a reality for the American people. On May 21, 1881, the American Association of the Red Cross was formed. She was then elected president of the association that June because of her leadership skills and determination that made the Red Cross possible in America. For the rest of her life, she spent most of her time leading the Red Cross, lecturing, attending national and international meetings, aiding with disasters, helping the homeless and poor, writing about her life in the Red Cross, and lecturing on women's rights and suffrage. She resigned as president of the American National Red Cross in 1904. She then established the National First Aid Association of America. This organization focused on basic first aid and instruction, emergency preparedness, and developed first aid kits. Clara Barton died in 1912 at the age of 90 at her Glen Echo home in Maryland. However, after she died, she left behind the legacy of the American Red Cross, which will forever be remembered because of the millions of lives that have been saved because of their help. The American Red Cross is still actively involved in rescue missions around the world. For example, they are actively providing support and supplies to the people that have just recently suffered flooding in the Balkans. Because of Barton, Americans are actively involved in helping the world. It was her determination and leadership all throughout her life that made the American Red Cross possible, and even after her death, she is always helping people and saving lives.